What happens when we die? It is the most fundamental question of human existence, a question that has given birth to religions, philosophies, and our deepest mythologies. For most of human history, the answers have followed a pattern, a cycle. A soul departs. It is judged. It is sent to a place of reward or a place of punishment. But what if the cycle breaks? What if, after a life of pure, unrepentant evil, you are rejected by everything? What if heaven locks its gates and hell refuses to stoke its fires for you? What if the very earth, the soil that gives life and embraces the dead, recoils from your touch, casting your body back to the surface? This is not a story about the afterlife. It is a story of being denied one. It is the story of the withered corpse. The dusk settles heavy and damp over the backlands of southeastern Brazil. For Valdir, a farmhand whose life is measured in seasons of planting and harvest, this is the hour of weary peace. The sun has bled out behind the hills, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange. The air, thick with the smell of wet earth and vegetation, begins to cool. His workday is done. The path home is long, a ribbon of dark soil cutting through a landscape of dense, ancient forest and small, cleared pastures. He walks with the steady, unhurried pace of a man who knows every twist and turn of the trail. But tonight, the path feels different. The usual chorus of evening life, the chirping of crickets, the calls of nocturnal birds, is absent. A profound, unnatural silence has fallen over the land. It's a silence that feels heavy, expectant. Valdir quickens his pace, a knot of unease tightening in his stomach. He tells himself it's just fatigue playing tricks on his mind. He hears a sound. It's not the snap of a twig under a jaguar's paw, nor the rustle of an armadillo in the undergrowth. It is a dry, whispering, skittering sound, like a bundle of dead leaves being dragged across stone. It's a sound that does not belong. It is weak, yet it cuts through the oppressive silence, scraping at the edges of his hearing. He stops, peering into the growing gloom ahead. And there, hunched by the side of the path, near an old, gnarled fig tree, is a figure. It's gaunt, emaciated, and unnaturally still. Valdir's first thought is that it's a sick traveler or a homeless man lost and starving. His rural code of honor demands he offer help. "Amigo," Valdir calls out, his voice hesitant. "Are you all right?" The figure does not respond. It remains hunched over, a crooked silhouette in the twilight. Valdir approaches cautiously, his hand resting on the handle of the long work knife at his belt. As he gets closer, the smell hits him. It is not the familiar scent of human sweat or sickness. It is the smell of dust, of ancient sun-baked attics, of leather left to rot for a century. It is the smell of absolute, profound dryness. He is now only a few feet away. "Sir, you need help?" Slowly, the figure begins to rise. It moves with a jerky, unnatural motion, like a marionette with tangled strings. It is impossibly tall and thin, a stick figure made of skin and bone. Its clothes are little more than rotted rags that cling to its frame. And its skin, Valdir's breath catches in his throat. It is not skin. It is a dark, leathery hide, cracked and wrinkled like old parchment, stretched so tight over the skeleton that every bone is visible. It turns its head. The face is a mummified nightmare. The eye sockets are hollow, vacant pits of shadow. The nose is gone, a mere hole. The mouth is a lipless slit, stretched open in a silent, eternal gasp. It is a face drained of all life, all moisture, all humanity for an age. This is not a man. This is a thing that was a man. Valdir stumbles backward, his mind screaming to run, but his legs are frozen in terror. The creature takes a shuffling step towards him. It is unnervingly light on its feet, its movements accompanied by that dry, rustling sound. It raises its arms, long skeletal limbs ending in dirty, talon-like fingernails. It is not attacking. It is reaching. Its posture is one of desperate, pathetic pleading. For a fatal second, Valdir's terror is replaced by a wave of horrified pity. This creature seems not to be a predator, but a victim, a soul in some unimaginable form of agony. He lowers his hand from his knife. It is the last mistake he will ever make. In a blur of motion that defies its decrepit appearance, the creature lunges. It does not punch or claw. It embraces him. The thing is impossibly light, like holding a scarecrow filled with dried leaves, but its grip is like iron. The skeletal arms wrap around Valdir's torso, the long, dirty talons digging into his back. He screams a choked, terrified sound and tries to pull away, but he is held fast. Then he feels it. A horrifying, intimate coldness spreading from every point of contact. It is not the chill of the grave. It is a draining, pulling sensation. He feels the warmth leaving his body. He feels the strength draining from his muscles, the very life force being siphoned out of him as if through 1,000 tiny straws. His vision begins to blur at the edges. The world dissolves into a gray tunnel. The last thing he sees is the hollow, empty eyes of the creature pressed against him, a black hole of unending need. The last thing he feels is himself becoming as dry and as empty as the thing that holds him. This is the terror of the Corpo-Seco, the withered corpse. It is a legend whispered in the rural heartlands of Brazil, a story that carries a unique and profound horror. It tells of a man so vile, so steeped in malice, that upon his death, the very fabric of existence rejects him. His soul finds no path to heaven or to hell, and his body, when laid to rest, is physically and violently expelled from the earth. The soil itself, the sacred ground that grants peace to all living things, recoils from his touch, casting his coffin back to the surface. He is an outcast from the cycle of life and death. This is what separates the withered corpse from all other forms of the undead. It is not a ghost lingering in the world to finish some unresolved business. A ghost is a soul without a body. The Corpo-Seco is a body without a soul, an empty vessel animated by a curse of pure negation. It has no mission, no memory of its former life. It is driven only by a desperate, parasitic need to feel the life it has lost. It is not a zombie, a mindless corpse reanimated by a virus or a necromancer, driven by a hunger for flesh. The withered corpse does not want to eat you. It wants to feel your warmth, to absorb your vitality, to experience a fleeting second-hand echo of the life it is forever denied. Its embrace is a horrifying act of intimacy, a cold, draining union that leaves its victims as empty shells. And it is not a vampire, an aristocratic predator that haunts the night with dark elegance. The Corpo-Seco has no grace, no charm, no supernatural powers beyond its accursed condition. It is a pathetic, disgusting creature, a piece of refuse discarded by the universe. Its horror lies not in its power, but in its absolute powerlessness, its condemnation to a state of being that is neither life nor death. It is an existential pariah, a glitch in the cosmic order, and its very existence is a blasphemy against nature. To understand how such a terrifyingly specific legend could arise, we must look to the places where it is still told. Not the bustling cities of Rio or São Paulo, but the deep interior, the isolated farmsteads and forgotten villages of the Brazilian sertão, and the dense forests of the Mata Atlântica. These are places where the modern world can feel miles away, where the nights are long and dark, and where the land itself is felt to be a living, breathing entity with a memory and a will of its own. In these communities, stories are not just entertainment. They are a currency, a history, and a warning. They are the collected wisdom of generations who have lived on the edge of a vast and often unforgiving wilderness. And in this lore, the earth is not just dirt and rock. It is a sacred being. It gives life, and at the end of that life, it offers the final embrace of the grave, a return to the source. The idea of the earth rejecting a body is therefore the most profound form of condemnation imaginable. It is an excommunication from nature itself. So, who could possibly earn such a fate? Who becomes the withered corpse? The legends are consistent on this point. The creature was once a man, but a man who was a monster long before he died. The tales do not speak of a single moment of weakness or a tragic mistake. They speak of a lifetime dedicated to pure, unadulterated evil. They speak of a man named a Sinadinho, or a Teofilo, or simply the worst man who ever lived. His sins were not grand or epic. They were intimate, personal, and profoundly cruel. He was a man who, the stories say, would beat his own mother, sometimes even to death. In a culture where the sanctity of the mother is paramount, this is the ultimate transgression, an unforgivable sin against the very source of one's life. He was a man who showed no kindness, no empathy, no compassion. He would starve his animals, cheat his neighbors, and find joy in the suffering of others. He was a blasphemer who cursed God and mocked the sacred, not out of intellectual doubt, but out of pure, spiteful malice. He was, in essence, a human void. A man who took everything and gave nothing back, not even a shred of decency or respect. He lived his life as a parasite on his family and his community. And so, in death, the universe responded in kind. It transformed him into a literal parasite, forever dependent on the life of others, forever denied the peace and belonging he had so thoroughly rejected in his own life. His curse is the perfect, horrifying reflection of his soul. He is condemned to be on the outside, looking in, for all eternity. This is not just a punishment. It is a diagnosis, the final, inescapable truth of his being, made manifest in a body of dried skin and bone. The existence of the withered corpse is a paradox. It has a physical body, but it is unnervingly weightless, sometimes described as being as light as a locust's husk. This is because it is a body devoid of all moisture, all substance, all the vital fluids that define the living. Its skin is not flesh, but a tough, tanned hide, like leather left in the sun for a century. Its bones are brittle, and its movements are often accompanied by a dry, rattling sound, the sound of ancient ligaments scraping against desiccated bone. It does not have a lair in the traditional sense, for no place will have it. It cannot burrow in the earth, and it cannot find rest. Instead, it haunts the boundaries, the liminal spaces between civilization and the wilderness. It clings to the boughs of ancient trees, particularly the gnarled fig tree, a plant often associated with both life and bad omens in Brazilian folklore. It waits, hanging among the branches, like a silent, desiccated fruit of pure evil, its hollow eyes scanning the paths below. It is a creature of ambush, but not of predatory cunning. It acts on a singular, desperate impulse. When a lone traveler passes beneath its perch, it does not leap down with a roar. It simply drops. It falls upon its victim's back with a dry, rustling thud, its lightness making the initial attack disorienting. Before the victim can even process what has happened, the creature's iron-hard skeletal limbs wrap around them in a deathly embrace. This is the core of the Corpo-Seco's horror. It does not bite, it does not claw for flesh, it clings. The moment its dry hide makes contact, the draining begins. Survivors of its attack, and there are very few, describe a sudden, invasive cold that plunges deep into their bones. It is a feeling of being hollowed out, of having their life, their warmth, their very vitality pulled from them. They grow weak almost instantly, their muscles refusing to respond, their vision fading. The Corpo-Seco does not drink blood like a vampire. It absorbs life force, a parasitic intimacy that is far more violating. So how does one fight an empty, silent face against its victim's back? a desperate attempt to feel the warmth of a life it can never again possess. So how does one fight an enemy that has been rejected by death itself? How do you kill that which is not truly alive? The folklore provides grim answers. Because the Corpo-Seco is an unholy entity, an abomination against the natural order, it is said to be vulnerable to symbols of faith. Shouting a prayer, brandishing a cross, or striking it with a blessed object can sometimes cause the creature to recoil, its grip faltering for just a moment, allowing a potential escape. But this is not a battle of strength. It is a battle of wills, a spiritual confrontation on a lonely dirt road. The creature's desperation is its greatest weapon. It will cling with the tenacity of a soul that has nothing else. Most victims are found days later, not as bloody corpses, but as desiccated husks. Their bodies as dry and as light as the creature that attacked them, their faces frozen in a final expression of confusion and unimaginable horror. They have not been killed, they have been emptied. Their life has simply been transferred, a final, futile offering to the man so evil the earth itself would not have him. The curse of the withered corpse is a sentence of eternal wandering, but it is not a curse of solitude. The folklore that birthed this monster also created a hierarchy of its kind, a chilling taxonomy of the damned. Not all men who are evil enough to be rejected by the earth are equal. The most common form of the Corpo-Seco is the pathetic, parasitic creature we have described, driven by a desperate need for the warmth of the living. But the legends speak of another, far more terrifying and malevolent form. This is the creature known as the Passa-peito, the chest passer. This is a withered corpse whose evil in life was so profound, so active and malicious, that its curse manifested not as a desperate need, but as a burning, unending rage. This creature is not content to simply drain the life from its victims. It seeks to inflict the ultimate violation. The Passa-peito does not cling to its victim's back. It merges with them. According to the darkest versions of the tale, this entity will ambush a traveler and, through a horrifying act of supernatural will, pass through their chest, possessing their body for a short time. For a few terrifying moments, the victim is a prisoner in their own flesh, their body controlled by the ancient, malevolent spirit of the Corpo-Seco. It is said that the creature uses its host to commit one final senseless act of violence, an attack on a loved one, a scream of blasphemy, or an act of self-harm, before abandoning the body. The victim is left alive, but they are forever changed. They are left with a profound spiritual stain, a cold spot in their soul where the abomination passed through. They are haunted by the memory of their own hands moving against their will, their own voice speaking words of hate they did not choose. This is the ultimate horror of the Corpo-Seco, the understanding that its evil is so potent it can not only drain your life, but can also turn your own body into a weapon against everything you hold dear.
It is a violation of the sanctum of the self, a curse that leaves scars on the soul long after the physical encounter has ended. This legend is a stark reminder that some evils are not content to merely exist. They seek to spread, to corrupt, and to defile all that is good. But a story of such specific existential horror is never just a story. A monster like the withered corpse is not born from a random flight of fancy. It is a carefully constructed parable, a social antibody created to combat a sickness that a community fears above all else: the man who breaks the fundamental social contract. To understand the Corpo-Seco, you must understand the world that created it. Not a world of grand cities, but of small, isolated agricultural communities where survival depended on absolute interdependence. In such a place, the community was everything.
To be an outcast, to be rejected by your neighbors and your family, was a fate often considered worse than death. The legend of the Corpo-Seco takes this social fear and elevates it to a cosmic, absolute principle. The man who lived as a parasite on his community is condemned to continue as one in death. The man who rejected the bonds of family and decency is, in turn, rejected by the bonds of nature itself. The core sin attributed to the man who becomes the Corpo-Seco is almost always the same. He beat his own mother. In the deeply family-oriented cultures of rural Brazil, where the figure of the mother is held as sacred, this is the ultimate, unthinkable transgression. It is a sin against the very source of life, an act of such profound ingratitude and cruelty that it is seen as a perversion of nature. And so, the punishment reflects the crime with horrifying precision. By raising a hand against his own creator, the man commits an act against the natural order. In death, Mother Earth, the greater source of all life, refuses him. She will not grant him the peace of her embrace. He has violated the sacred feminine principle of creation and nurture, and so he is excommunicated from it for all eternity. The curse is a form of cosmic justice, a terrifyingly literal interpretation of the idea that nature itself will turn against those who defy its most fundamental laws. The withered corpse is a walking, desiccated monument to the one sin that can never be forgiven. The fear of a corpse that does not rest is not unique to Brazil. It is a primal terror woven into the very fabric of human mythology. To truly unmask the Corpo-Seco, we must place it among its undead brethren, for it is in comparing it to the ghouls, mummies, and revenants of the world that its truly unique horror is revealed. The most immediate visual parallel is the mummy of ancient Egypt. Here, too, we have a body that defies decay. But the comparison ends there. Mummification was a sacred, meticulous art, an act of profound love and reverence designed to preserve the body as a vessel for the soul's journey into the afterlife. The mummy was a house prepared for eternity. The Corpo-Seco is the antithesis of this. Its preservation is not a holy rite, but a cosmic curse. Its body is not a vessel for a soul's journey. It is a prison from which the soul has fled, a prison that is denied any destination at all. It is a body preserved not by love, but by rejection. A closer relative can be found in the cold lands of the north, in the figure of the Norse Draugr. Like the Corpo-Seco, the Draugr is a physical, corporeal undead, a reanimated corpse that brings harm to the living. But the Draugr is a creature of immense power. It possesses superhuman strength, can shapeshift, and guards its burial mound with a violent, territorial malice. Its horror is that of brute force and supernatural might. The Corpo-Seco, by contrast, is a creature of horrifying weakness. It is light, brittle, and pathetic. Its terror comes not from its strength, but from its parasitic desperation. The Draugr guards its tomb. The Corpo-Seco is horrifying precisely because it has no tomb to guard. Perhaps its closest kin is the European revenant. The revenant is a corpse that rises from its grave, often driven by a singular purpose: to avenge its own death or to torment the living it knew. This narrative of a spirit returning to its body to enact a final will is a powerful one. But again, the distinction is crucial. The revenant returns from the grave. The Corpo-Seco was never allowed in. The revenant has a purpose, a mission, a final flicker of human agency. The Corpo-Seco has none. It is an empty thing, driven only by a mindless, instinctual need. It is not a ghost that returns. It is a body that was never allowed to leave. The specific terror of a body being expelled from the earth is a concept that echoes in the darkest corners of Abrahamic religious lore. In sacred texts and apocryphal tales, the ground itself is often an active participant in divine judgment. After Cain commits the first murder, God condemns him, saying, "The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." So now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. This establishes a profound connection. The earth is a witness to sin, a sacred entity that can be defiled. This idea reaches its most potent form in the concept of consecrated ground. A cemetery, blessed by a priest, is not just a plot of land. It is a holy sanctuary, an antechamber to the afterlife. In Catholic tradition, those who died in a state of mortal sin, suicides, heretics, the excommunicated, were historically denied burial within these sacred walls. They were interred outside the cemetery gates, in unconsecrated ground, a final, public declaration of their separation from God's grace. The legend of the Corpo-Seco takes this already terrifying concept and pushes it to its absolute, horrifying extreme. The man who becomes the withered corpse is so evil that even the unconsecrated ground of a common field or a desolate forest will not have him. His sin is a corruption so profound that it transcends religious doctrine and becomes a physical law of nature. It is as if the planet itself, as a living organism, is treating his body as a poison, a foreign entity that must be purged for the health of the whole. This idea of a physical, earthly rejection imbues the legend with a sense of inescapable, cosmic horror.
It is one thing to be judged by a distant, unseen deity. It is another thing entirely to be judged by the very ground beneath your feet. The curse is not a whisper from the heavens. It is a violent, physical verdict delivered by the world itself. It suggests that our actions have a weight, a real, tangible impact on the fabric of reality, and that a life of sufficient evil can leave a stain so deep that it makes you anathema to existence. This is not just a ghost story. It is a parable about the physics of sin. The question, then, is not whether the Corpo-Seco is real, but why it feels so. The legend endures because it is a perfect vessel for the anxieties of the communities that tell it.
In a world governed by the unpredictable whims of nature, drought, flood, disease, misfortune is a constant companion. The Corpo-Seco provides a focal point for this anxiety, a supernatural scapegoat for the inexplicable. When a sudden blight ruins a season's crops, it is easier to blame the passing of a cursed entity than to accept the harsh randomness of nature. When a healthy man falls victim to a sudden, wasting sickness, a disease that seems to drain the very life from his body, the story of the withered corpse's embrace offers a terrifying but complete explanation. The monster's existence brings a dark order to a chaotic world. It confirms that there are rules, even if those rules are horrifying. It suggests that suffering is not random, but is the result of a malevolent force that can, perhaps, be understood and avoided. This process is self-reinforcing. A real-world event, like a mysterious death or a failed harvest, is attributed to the Corpo-Seco. This sighting or attack then becomes a new chapter in the local lore, a fresh piece of evidence that is passed down to the next generation. The legend is not just told, it is actively maintained, updated with every tragedy that it is called upon to explain. It is a living myth, a story that feeds on the very fears of the people who tell it. Furthermore, the legend served as a powerful social regulator. In small, interdependent communities, the greatest threat is the individual who refuses to contribute, the person who takes without giving, the parasite. The story of the Corpo-Seco is the ultimate parable about this type of social transgression. It takes the abstract concept of a social parasite and transforms it into a literal, physical one. The man who lived by draining the resources and goodwill of his family and neighbors is condemned to an afterlife where that is the only action he can perform. The story served as a stark warning to anyone who might stray from the communal path. It said in the clearest possible terms, "Your actions in this life have eternal consequences, and if you live like a monster among men, you will be condemned to an existence as a monster, alone, for all time." The Corpo-Seco was not just a creature that haunted the trees. It was a specter that haunted the conscience of the community, a constant, terrifying reminder of the price of becoming an outcast. In the 21st century, the withered corpse has not vanished. It has merely changed its hunting grounds. The terror it represents has evolved. The primal fear of a body rejected by the earth now finds new resonance in an age of alienation and disconnection. The stories of modern encounters with the Corpo-Seco are rarer, but they are in many ways more disturbing, for they prey on our contemporary anxieties. The lone farmhand on a dirt path has been replaced by the hiker or the eco-tourist seeking a connection with nature in the remote national parks of Brazil. The stories often come from these places, the vast, mountainous expanse of the Serra da Canastra, or the dense, subtropical forests of the Petar Park. A hiker, separated from their group, takes a wrong turn as dusk begins to fall. They are surrounded by an unfamiliar, ancient forest, the sounds of their friends growing distant. A sudden, unnatural silence descends. They feel a chilling sensation of being watched. Looking up, they see something impossibly thin and dark clinging to the high branches of a tree, a shape that looks disturbingly like a desiccated human form. They tell themselves it's a termite nest, a strange fungal growth, a trick of the failing light. They hurry on, their heart pounding. And then they hear it. The dry, rustling sound of something dropping to the forest floor behind them. They don't look back. They run. Other stories come from the fringes of rural towns, from teenagers daring each other to enter the one place that everyone knows is haunted, the Casa do Corpo-Seco. It is often an abandoned farmhouse, a crumbling ruin on the edge of town, said to be the former home of the man who became the monster. The dare is simple. Spend a few minutes inside after dark. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of dust and decay. The silence is absolute. But those who have taken the dare speak of a strange phenomenon. They feel a sudden, inexplicable coldness and a feeling of profound, draining weakness, as if their energy is being sapped away. They become dizzy, lightheaded. They flee the house, stumbling back into the fresh air, feeling as though they have just escaped an invisible predator. There is no monster, no visible creature. There is only the lingering, parasitic presence left behind by the man who was rejected by the world. A spiritual stain that can still be felt. A cold spot in the fabric of reality. The enduring horror of the withered corpse in the modern age lies not in its physical threat, but in its profound psychological symbolism. This creature is the ultimate embodiment of loneliness. It is a being defined by what it lacks: a soul, a resting place, a connection to the world, and any form of identity. It is a void in the shape of a man. In an era where we are supposedly more connected than ever through technology, we are also plagued by an epidemic of loneliness and social isolation. The Corpo-Seco is a terrifying externalization of that internal feeling of being an outcast, of being disconnected from the world around us. Its method of attack, clinging, draining, absorbing warmth, is a grotesque parody of a human embrace. It is a desperate, horrifying search for the connection and vitality it is forever denied. It represents the terror of a loneliness so profound that it becomes parasitic, a need so desperate that it can only be satisfied by consuming the life of another. The fear of the Corpo-Seco is not just the fear of being attacked by a monster. It is the fear of becoming one,
of becoming so isolated, so empty, that our own need for connection becomes a destructive force. Furthermore, the legend of the man rejected by the earth itself speaks to a deep-seated ecological anxiety. The story is a powerful, if terrifying, parable about belonging to a natural system. The man who becomes the Corpo-Seco is the ultimate polluter.
His evil is a spiritual toxin, a corruption so profound that the ecosystem of existence itself cannot absorb him. He is a piece of unrecyclable waste, a glitch in the natural cycle of life, death, and decay. In an age where we are increasingly aware of our own destructive impact on the planet, the story of a man who becomes anathema to nature has a chilling new relevance. It is a reminder that there are consequences for living out of balance with the world around us, that some actions are so profoundly unnatural they can lead to a state of permanent, horrifying exile. The Corpo-Seco is not just a monster of religious guilt. It is a monster of ecological consequence, a walking, withered symbol of the ultimate rejection. He is the ghost that haunts the guilty conscience of a species that has too often acted like a parasite upon the earth that gives it life. The withered corpse is a truly unique figure in the global pantheon of the undead. It is not a creature of power, but of pathetic need. It is not a symbol of rebellion against death, but of a damnation so complete it is denied even the peace of the grave. It is a monster born not from a bite or a virus, but from the quiet, personal decision to live a life devoid of empathy, kindness, and connection. Its legend is a dark mirror, reflecting our deepest anxieties about our place in the world. It forces us to confront the terrifying question: is there an evil so absolute that it makes you incompatible with existence itself? The Corpo-Seco is the horrifying answer to that question. It is a walking, desiccated testament to the idea that our humanity is not a given. It is a contract, a sacred agreement with the world. And if that contract is broken, if we live a life that takes everything and gives nothing, we risk becoming the one thing that nature, God, and even the devil cannot abide. An outcast, forever clinging to the warmth of a world that will never again call us its own. This monster, born from a fear of moral corruption, is but one of the many horrors that lurk in the shadows of Brazilian folklore. While the Corpo-Seco represents a man who defies the laws of nature, there are other entities that embody nature's laws, twisting them into a force of terrifying, chaotic justice. Join us next time as we venture deep into the Amazon rainforest to unmask the true nature of the Curupira, a creature known for its backward-facing feet and its role as a protector of the forest. It is often seen as a mischievous spirit. But we will explore the darker tales, the forgotten origins of a being whose methods for punishing those who disrespect the jungle are far more sadistic and horrifying than any simple trickster's prank. We will uncover the truth behind the forest demon.